some tips to prepare your proposal, and this is one of the chapters in the research methods in computer science to be taught at University Putra Malaysia. Let's start with the purpose of preparing a proposal. There are several purposes. Either you want to propose a research project that will result in a significant contribution to knowledge. You want to formulate a detailed plan for some projects where you want to highlight about the methodological approach and the theoretical framework. Well, maybe you want to ensure that the proposed research is achievable within the required time. And the purpose also is to demonstrate that you have adequate expertise and experience to undertake the project. Typically, the format of the proposal should be around 2 to 3,500 words with span between 5 to 8 pages and written in 12-point times movement, double space, justified single column, and margin left and right of 3 cm. Before you proceed, ask yourself these questions. What do you want to study? Why is the topic important? How is it significant with the subjects or things that you already learn and know? What are the problems that your proposed solution will solve? How does it build upon some existing works? Is it any relevant? And exactly what you plan to do, and can you do it in the given time? The structure of the proposal is typically with this flow. It consists of 6 parts. The background, which consists also of the significance and research problem, research aims and questions, the review of literature, the project design or methodology, timeline, expected outcomes, and usually at the end there will be references, which is compulsory but not counted as part of your pages. Let us reflect on the scientific research steps which have been covered in the previous chapter. There are 8 steps, from identifying the problem, reviewing the literature, clarifying the problem. Step 4, to clearly identify the terms and concepts, then you define your population, instrumentation plan, and data collection as part of the methodology. And imagine after the methodology, you collect the data and you analyze data and you report it. So these are basically the scientific research steps. So your proposal is a documentation that will tell the plan on how you would be able to conduct all these scientific research steps. Make sure that you choose something relevant in your discipline. These are some of the discipline under computer sciences. Therefore, for you to proceed in each of your selected discipline or selected focus, specialization, look into what is the current and relevant works and something that really entice you and make you focus and complete the project. Let us start with the first part of the proposal, the introduction, which is very important. And this is the place or the section where you create paragraphs to write about the central research problem, the topic of the study, the methods, and why it is important. Basically, this section will give some background on what you are going to do. Next, the second section typically focuses on the problem statements. This is where you state the research problem and you give more detailed explanation about the purpose of the study, deeper than what has been provided in the introduction. The objectives is where you present the rationale of your proposed study and why is it worth doing, as well as to answering the so what. The next section is research questions. You can describe the major issues or the problems to be addressed, and you can come out with questions relating to the problem statements, and these should also be aligned with your objective. Then, provide your hypothesis in the next section. And here, be sure to note how what you want to propose builds on previous assumptions about the research problem. An example will be provided at the end of the slide, so it will be clearer to you. Research scope is the section where you describe the boundaries. This is where also you can explain about the data set that you can use, the metrics, the size of the work, and where appropriate, state not only what you plan to study, but also what will be excluded. As for the significance, tell why this is significant to you and why others should be interested in it. So your proposal would be able to let other scholars who are examining your proposal to look at its importance. Then, the literature review. This practically would take the longest amount of your time before you come out with your problem statement. In this section, you can practice this 5C. To cite, to compare with the various arguments, theories and methodologies, to contrast with existing works, to critique the literature and to connect the literature in your own area with what has been available and what is the gap. Generally, at least 12 to 20 articles may be used to provide context of the current problem. In the methodology section, you specify the research process that you will take and how you will interpret the results. This is also the section where you will describe about your solution, the tools that you're going to use, and what you will do to address the problem. Put an argument as to why these tasks add up to the best way to investigate the research problem and not just as list of tasks. You may utilize a table which provide the phases, the activities, the milestone, the deadline, as well as the explanation about why these activities are important in your proposed research. Be sure to also anticipate and acknowledge any potential barriers and pitfalls. In the section about the time schedule, for your own purposes, the Master of Computer Science, plan for 6 months of work or spanning of 2 semesters. And this is where you include an outline of the various stages as explained in the methodology section. So these 2 sections can be together or they can be separated, but they are obviously very connected to each other. As for the implications part, this is where you will set and you will inform what the results will mean to practitioners and people who work in the similar area and how your results will influence the other stakeholders as well as in the body of knowledge. As for the conclusion chapter, you should explain again and try to convince the reader why the study should be done, the specific purpose of the study and the research questions, the decision to why the research design and methods have been selected and chosen over other options, implications, and some statement to tell how your study fits within the broader scholarship about the research problem. The last part is the references, where here you list out references of bibliography and you should include a list of citation or references to key articles and a selection of sources appropriate to your proposed research. You can follow several formats depending on the discipline. For this course, I expect you to use IEEE format. Then, the materials referred to prepare this document as provided here. I thank you very much. Right. Now let's go to see some examples that I have prepared for you. This is the first example of one of my previous proposals, and the title is as given here: Early Warning and Monitoring System Using Sensor Networks for Reverse Search Phenomenon. The specific title is this: Edge Analytic with Multitasking Deep Neural Network Based Reverse Search, Risk Surveillance and Prediction. Let us focus on the executive summary, depending on the format of the document. In Malaysia's Ministry of Higher Education, this is one of the format used, and we have to provide the executive summary. This executive summary basically contains problem statement, objectives, research methodology, expected outcome, and significance of output. And this is like a compressed version of what's been written in the proposal. This is the part where we write the problem statement. In this problem, I provided 3 different problems. In each problem statement, we have to provide also the references and highlighting the problems. For example, here, in comparison to flood studies, river surge risk modeling remains unexplored, although the risk is equally disastrous. And this is how you can write the statements. Write about the problems. What is the gap? And here also you can tell what is the gaps in each of the study. In the hypothesis, this is the way how to write the hypothesis, what you assume and what you expect to happen. Research questions are typically list of questions. In the literature review, again, you may say that this is similar to the problem statements, but really the problem statements focus on only the problems. In literature review, it spans bigger because it highlights about existing approaches and you connect between one work with another. So this is how the connection happens. For example, I list here the papers relates to susceptibility, to vulnerability, and more importantly, at each paragraph or each section, we have to relate what is the gap. So for example, here currently there is no data-driven model for reverse search forecasting systems. Then similarly, the currently developed internet-enabled applications require fast processing and quick response time. And then this is how you can tell the gap also. However, blah blah blah, there is a problem in blah blah blah. Some methods may work well but still lack the ability of blah 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 on top of these issues. What are the problem? So that is an example of the literature review. And for the references, list the references according to relevant format. Next, for the objectives. Here, the objectives are to characterize and model the relationship, to design and develop, to formulate a water safety survival risk index. This objective is aligned with the problem statement. In the methodology, this is where we can explain about the phases. You see here, the writing of the phases. Then to relate with, considering this is a big project, so we relate with other sub-projects, then explaining about the framework and the phases and what are the activity in the phases, what was planned to be done and how it will be done, and then the table that provides the phases and activities and approaches. It's also advisable that you provide the framework. This is the research activities part where you can provide the start and end date with milestone and the flow for the timeline and the implication or impact statement as provided here. So this is my first example. The second example is this on evolutionary multi-policy based multi-objective deep reinforcement learning, providing the introduction, and in the introduction you can explain about the existing approach. The first paragraph explain about the general area of the proposal, of the study, topic related in the proposal, and then the recent approaches and what is the focus of the proposal, then explaining about the existing works, however, blah blah blah. So some parts of the problem statement is also provided here, and therefore in this proposal you justify what you want to do, Then explaining about the organization of the proposal. In the problem statements, we typically focus on what is the exact problem statement. For example, the statement is here. However, these methods are based on blah blah blah, besides blah blah, the value is blah blah blah. Usually, so this is where you argue and you support. And again, the second problem with this however and but, and therefore supporting why this study is important. Then as for the scope, telling about the boundary and policies reward, what needs to be focused, and the objectives to design, to determine, to evaluate. The literature review, explaining about the general of multi-objective optimization, the types, and explaining each of the work. So I have many sections here, deep enforcement learning, with each of the discussion of advantages and advantages, strengths, weaknesses related to the problem statement. So this is how you can write on the literature review for each part and the proposed approach. So this is the methodology, and typically provide diagram, and this is the methodology part, explaining about the activities and deadlines and costing, as well as the references. Alright, so that ends the examples I prepared for you. That's all. Thank you.